Parenting. It comes with all the joys. But also all the stress. And in times of need, the first stop for most modern parents, the internet. But in that vast online space, information and facts are mixed up with opinions, judgment, and unrealistic standards. So, how is a new parent to know what's the right answer for them and their child? In the age of the internet, has the internet broken parenting? For many, parenthood starts during a woman's pregnancy. And for first-time parents, all the anxiety and excitement start then.
Naturally, they're very excited. They're hoping to see their baby on the ultrasound scan and see a heartbeat, because obviously that confirms that the pregnancy is ongoing and hopefully is healthy. They would naturally be anxious as to whether the baby is all right or not.
And the uncertainties don't stop after the baby has arrived.
When the new parents come in, they're unsure of many things. Actually, they're unsure of everything. Whether it's common, whether it's normal. Do we expect this? Do we don't expect this? Do we do something or we don't do anything?
And all those worries and concerns can have an impact on the parent's mental well-being.
They're living in a lot of anxiety. What a balanced, healthy pregnancy should look like. And of course, the natural anxiety about not really knowing how to raise a child and how to be a parent. And when you have more than one child, then some of the anxieties might be around whether I will love my second child as much as I will love my first.
To embark on the parenting journey is a momentous thing. And for generations, most would have sought answers to their questions from their doctor, from books, and of course from family and friends. But that was before the World Wide Web took off. These days, the internet would be the #1 go-to source for answers. Whether it's official websites or parenting apps, online parenting support groups, various social media platforms, or even mobile chat groups. There is something for everyone. But sometimes that something can get overwhelming, misleading, painful even, and instead of providing answers, lead to more questions.
Many parents find that the internet is useful in a sense that they can access it anytime, but the problem comes with the amount of information they can get. Because they have read up more, they start doubting themselves, and that makes them confused and stressed.
When parents come to the clinic and they have a question for you and you give them some advice, very often they'll say, oh, but I read on the internet, and maybe it will actually almost contradict the advice that you're giving them. It's amazing the things that you can learn on the internet. Some of it is fact, but a lot of it is opinion. And the challenge is actually separating the fact from the opinion. Anybody can write a blog and put their own personal opinions on the internet, and sometimes these opinions can be very polarizing. They may not represent the absolute truth.
When it works out well, you go online and you can find a community of people, and that takes away the loneliness of newborn parenting. It can normalize the difficulties you're experiencing because you hear, oh, a lot of other people are experiencing the same. But when it goes badly, you feel even more alone and worse about yourself.
In this series, we will meet some mummies and daddies who have all had good and bad experiences with the internet. On balance, has it been a help or a hindrance to them?
Definitely help. The internet gave me a lot of social community support and knowledge that I wouldn't have access to otherwise.
Hindrance. Looking back, I really think that I could have easily kept myself away.
Help, because it has given me a lot of information that I don't know beforehand.
All this information we need to filter to cater to our baby.
More of a hindrance because it created a very strong imbalance within her that she's not good enough.
More of a help. However, it's been more about navigating with caution and understanding that there is such an abundance of content online.
This is Data. Come on.
Can I have some?
Expat couple Roxanne and Sam had their first child, Evie, in May of 2022.
I first became pregnant at 39 and gave birth to Evie at 40. I felt like there was a lot of soul-searching and information that I needed to get my hands on in order for me to feel mentally and physically prepared to have Evie, because I was able to understand and read and listen to stories of other women that were going through the same process as I was. And I feel that the level of anonymity that I had with that as well was a big plus for me.
It armed us with relevant information, but at the same time, there's so much noise. And sometimes we had to filter out. It was a pinch of salt that we had to take.
Pamela and Hong Yi too had to do filtering. They became first-time parents in March 2023 when little Jalil was born.
In our circle, we are the first to give birth to our kid.
So the fastest way available is through the internet. Like you just type in the question, then they will give a whole list of answers.
But you get a lot of information. It's like even your usual sick, why am I coughing? Then they can give you a whole list of why you're coughing. Right? But you have to own guess, eliminate which is the one that is really causing your coughing. Whereas if you ask an expert, you can get the direct answer without needing to eliminate.
Michelle and Wei Kang are parents to 3-year-old Elliot and 1-year-old Eliza. They too didn't have many family members to turn to for advice.
I had quite a small pool of elders that I could seek advice from, so I relied heavily on the internet. There was so much information on the internet that I could choose from. It really boils down to the information that resonated with me.
I think the internet is a double-edged sword. Everybody has to look at it objectively, and most importantly, not to take anything that you see on the internet as the gospel truth. But that may not be easy during parenthood because as new parents, you get very nervous.
Khushbu would say that she is a nervous parent. She and her husband Rahul had their second child, Ziva, in December 2019.
I am an overthinker by nature, and I tend to get too much into researching. And I think while I was detected with preeclampsia on both my pregnancies, ended up in preterm births, I would say I tended to react even before the symptoms would appear just because I had the knowledge. It's good if people are able to be selective. I wasn't, and it only affected me in a negative way.
I kind of advised her, like, you have to be looking for the top searches, and there are some resources which you cannot trust. And to be honest, I relied quite a lot on internet and got to know a lot of stuff which I was not aware.
Lydia and Derek were also relying on the internet for help with their first child, Zayn.
As a first-time parent, I didn't know anything, so a lot of information online was very useful. So definitely having internet access as well as social media did help to broaden my perspective, as well as help me to connect with many social communities.
I do see myself turning to the internet more for information.
But there are a lot of different views on the internet, so the things that I am trying to digest might not be similar to the things that my wife agrees to. So that actually can lead to a certain kind of power struggle between me and my wife.
Parents go hunting for strategies and information because they come from a place of concern. Naturally, equipping yourself with as much information as possible gives you a bit of a sense of control. We want to control as many factors as we can so that we feel more equipped to handle the situation. But if I apply that to parenting principles, you would imagine that even if you are a parent of 2, 3, 4 children, every child is different.
Everybody is an individual and your experiences won't always be identical. So even if one person has experienced, a certain pattern of events, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else with the same condition will end up exactly the same way.
So as a parent, you can always read on different techniques and tricks as well as the suggestion on the internet, but understand all may not apply to your baby.
But with the internet being such a wilderness of information, how did our parents navigate their way through? Starting from pregnancy. When a woman becomes pregnant, her body undergoes a myriad of changes.
As a woman develops in the pregnancy, hormone levels are changing. Morning sickness is a very common and well recognized symptom of early pregnancy. The hormonal changes can also affect the muscles and ligaments, so sometimes it's more common to have aches and pains in the various joints, particularly in the pelvis. Obviously, as the baby grows, the woman is also going to gain weight from the baby growing, from increased fluid and the possibility of fluid retention.
And it's not only physical changes, but emotional and mental ones.
When we get pregnant, we have reversible and irreversible body changes, and that would mean that we would probably have to adjust our mindset to that. That can sometimes cause low mood and anxiety, and that low mood can cause a lot of teariness, a lot of stress, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. You also don't sleep very well when you're pregnant, and you also probably don't eat very well when you're pregnant. So if you're not having your basic needs met, you must also expect that your mood will get affected.
With so much happening, new and even not so new parents will turn to online sources for explanations and solutions. Khushbu was one such parent. She had preeclampsia, a serious blood pressure condition, during both pregnancies, leading to preterm births.
I did not understand the seriousness at first. It was only up until the 5th month when I was told that your fetus is not growing anymore and we'll have to do a whole lot and this may not go full term. And that's when my madness of going after the internet and getting more information become even more targeted. And then it started worsening the situation. It added up to my BP readings shooting even higher. And it's not just the child who's not doing well, it's me also who was not doing well because I had this hyperemesis condition where I was vomiting throughout my pregnancy and it was too much. All in all, it was very hard to take.
I assured her that everything would be fine and asked her not to panic much. I did my research, had some idea to make informed decisions. At what point of time I should be reaching out to doctors, at what point of time I should raise an alarm, call ambulance. Thank internet for that. I told her about all those positive and successful outcomes. People who had gone through preeclampsia, and it's not always bad.
Pamela too had a difficult pregnancy.
The first trimester, I just spent the whole time on the bed. I couldn't even get up and do anything. Then I was puking more than 10 times a day. I thought like, okay, when you reach second trimester, it's not too bad, right? But then I started getting quite bad water retention. Also, I started getting quite bad acid reflux. So I cannot lie down at all. I will sit up and sleep. From the second trimester all the way till the end till I give birth. It's just different from what is the norm on the internet lah.
We went online to find for a solution, but acid reflux is one thing that there's no fixed solution. There's no one size fits all. So I actually got her a pregnancy pillow that actually helped her to sleep better, introduced medicine to suppress the acid from coming up every night.
I did feel upset, like how come I got so many problems, but then other people like don't have these problems. How come other people on social media, they seem like their pregnancy is quite easy. For me, when it's so tough, I felt like, oh, maybe I don't want to get pregnant again. Yeah.
I think it's important to remember that these smooth internet pregnancies, like so many other areas on the internet, are just heavily curated, heavily edited, and that's very understandable from a content creator point of view. If someone's feeling overwhelmed, then they should actually just cut it off. They should stop looking at the internet.
Aside from the changes that her body is undergoing, expectant mothers are also looking at potential changes to their diets and more. Here, the internet can be both a bane and a boon.
I rely heavily on the internet to look for things, simple things like how much coffee can I drink, how much exercise is healthy for me and safe for me. There were some contradictory advices on the internet, like for example, some pages were just saying that, just consume normally and you don't need supplements because the baby will just get the nutrients from food. But there were some that heavily relied on the promotion of using supplements. So I really didn't know how to discern.
During my first pregnancy, I went to the internet to find the kind of healthy foods that I should be eating. I was very active on social media. I also keep up a lot with celebrities' lifestyle. They deliver 3 kids and they pop and then they just go back to normal life, looking the same. It really made me want to have this sort of ideal pregnancy diet and lifestyle. But I was diagnosed with placenta previa, which is also low-lying placenta. This meant that I had to have a lot more reduced activity and bed rest, which is in contrast to this ideal lifestyle that I wanted to have. This time round, for my second pregnancy, again, I still have low-lying placenta, right? But I can feel the difference in the mentality and the emotions. I prioritize what I would want to eat a lot more, what my body is telling me a lot more, having a lot more trust and following my intuition a lot more.
Parents are always very concerned about what should they be eating, what should they be avoiding. It's more general common sense rather than a specific diet. Our health promotion board quarter half plate is actually a very sensible way of healthy eating, and that can be applied during pregnancy as well. Exercise is definitely recommended, and what you can do in pregnancy very much depends on what your baseline level of fitness was, and you may need to adjust and reduce the activity gradually as you advance in your pregnancy. So online advice or online information, some of it is good, particularly if it has been provided by a reputable institution. But the way that the internet works, that if something gets shared and reshared, it could go viral and nobody will be able to really stop it.
Besides the mother's well-being, expectant parents will also be keeping a close eye on the developing baby. Roxanne and Sam had a bad scare during their first pregnancy, when scans showed abnormalities.
That was you!
Evie at the time, just based on the measurements, they called it microcephaly, which is the shrinking of the head. There could have been potential learning difficulties as well as growth difficulties and going into like a special need.
Our whole world just felt like it was crashing down. Rather than talking about it or looking together, we were looking independently, and it was taking us down that same rabbit hole. We were looking at the same extreme images for conditions related to microcephaly.
Because every link that you clicked on, it never went best case, it always went worst case.
It was extremely depressing. It wasn't a good time for us.
Fortunately, at the end of it, we came out and everything was fine, but you look back at it now and you go, if that was the biggest scare that we could have raising kids, I'll take that any day of the week.
Yeah. It's really normal and appropriate to feel overwhelmed, stressed, worried, anxious when you read about something about your baby because you want your baby to be healthy. Don't underestimate our body and our ability to cope with crises and stresses, but definitely find information from credible sources and start building your village right from the beginning of pregnancy. If I just keep reading, there will be more information about something else that I'll find, but what actually would work for me. So have that filter first before you just absorb the information.
Ew, so cute!
As baby's due date gets closer, parents have a lot of preparations to do and more information and advice to sieve through. Preparing for the arrival of baby can keep many new parents very busy. From getting all the necessary baby products, to readying older children for a new sibling, to building plans. The internet can come in very useful or not.
Do you want to show the stacking?
I was really pragmatic. We need a cot, we need a bouncer. Okay, let's just tick box, okay. And then Rox was like, what about these cute clothes? And what about this? And I'm like...
In my whole grand plan to have the perfect nursery, I went along for the safari theme. You start typing in safari theme and then you start clicking on a few more things, and then all of a sudden programmatic kicks in and you have all of these suggestions. What about these curtain hangers shaped like monkeys? And what about these carpets? And what about these things? And I saw this safari rocker, which Evie didn't end up sitting into until she was about 7 months old. But I had that rocker before I had anything.
Some things got vetoed, but other things, like I came home, where did that come from? I wasn't even informed. But it was fun to go through that process. Like, looking back at it now, like we had some good laughs.
Khushbu and Rahul too turned to the internet in their preparation for their first child.
I'm a big internet shopper. While you are not moving when you're pregnant, the best thing you can do is just browse through everything that is available, and everything is at your disposal. I remember doing a lot of pre-ordering of baby's clothing and of course breast pumps, anything to aid with feeding, the milk storage bags.
I kind of started looking around my house. But okay, I had to go after internet, and I bought quite a lot of baby proofing items.
For Lydia and Derek, who already have a 4-year-old, preparing for the second child now is more straightforward.
What else?
Second time round, definitely no checklist. We used the templates that we had from the first time round. So when it came to our first baby, preparation. There was a lot of research done online, again across multiple articles, resources, which were all collated onto this like 30-page document. We also went to communities to look for baby nursery checklists and collated quite a few, not just from social communities, online, from Facebook, friends as well. We also signed up for antenatal classes, which we read online.
First pregnancy, rely quite a bit on the internet. Vast information in terms of the products you can buy, in terms of the methods you can use, safety side of things. How do you prepare your house for the baby? But there's a lot of articles or internet information that actually sway you towards using a particular product.
Most of the time, they can just be marketing strategies by the companies. We were very discerning when it came to purchasing the products.
But there is something Lydia and Derek will have to do this time.
He's over here.
Preparing the son for his new sibling.
He's a baby, B-A-B-Y. Now you see. Could you hear again?
Our son, Zain, displayed signs of jealousy in the past couple of months. For example, he could just run up and hit my wife's tummy. And he's asking for Lydia's time more than usual. So I went on to the internet to see how to manage jealousy among kids. So some of the actions that we took after we went on to the internet is to explain to him that we will get him involved. He's a big brother now, so he has a role to play.
I'm very appreciative and grateful that Derek puts in the effort to source for a lot of information online. I also went to do my own research, and we found that there were a lot of common grounds between the information that we found. It was really good because now when he has one-on-one time with Zain, he would say things like, oh, you're now a big brother, you have a new responsibility. And then when I put him to sleep, I will add that on and emphasize what Daddy has said earlier on.
While Lydia and Derek took guidance from the internet on sibling adjustment, Michelle and her husband, Wei Kang, turned to family instead.
Our sister-in-law actually has an older boy as well as a younger daughter, so our niece and our nephew. So naturally, when it came to Elliot's turn to have a younger sister, he looked to them and that became part of his work. So we didn't actively seek out the internet.
One clever thing that she did was when our daughter was born, she prepped some little presents and we brought it to the hospital. So when our son visited our daughter for the first time, he said, oh, this present was given to you by your little sister.
Because we're dealing with human behavior and human emotions, and it's the interaction between siblings, there's no simple answer. So rather than looking for a particular set of tips, I really recommend people think about how every child has a right to feel the emotions that they feel. Even if those emotions sometimes make the parent's life a little bit harder, those guiding principles can help you make decisions in specific moments. Whereas if you take very specific tips, especially tips from somebody else with different values and different circumstances than you, it might be very hard to try to force fit that onto the unique situations that arise in your family.
Then, of course, there's the birth itself. In Pamela's case, she had to induce labour.
I was at 39 weeks already, but I was still not dilated. Then the baby's weight was a bit too heavy already. We actually had to research quite a bit at that point of time to decide whether induced labour is good or bad. So I tried to read a lot of stories, like people's blog, their birth story, as in how it went when they have induced labour. And I wanted to know how was the process, like what time is it that you go in, or like how long will the doctor keep you, what do they do to you, and whether is it safe. It's actually helpful in the sense that based on what I researched so far, it's like blogs where they will tell you specifically at what time, what they do, and it kind of matched in terms of the procedures of what I went through for an induced labour.
It's quite common nowadays for women to have a birth plan, which kind of sets out their various desires of how they wish their labour to go. And while I think that it's actually good to have some preferences in mind, I always emphasize to my patients that while these are preferences, sometimes things don't always go according to plan. And the more fixed a person has their expectations of how a labour is going to go, the greater the likelihood of disappointment if things don't quite turn out. And so I'm always very keen to emphasize to my patients, if things like this happen, you are not a failure.
In my clinical experience and personal experience, I think almost 90% of the birth plans don't really go to plan. And at that point is really having to trust your OB that he or she will make the right decision for you to deliver your baby healthily. Mother and child are healthy and safe. And if we can take on more curious approach and be in the moment approach, and one with some gratitude, maybe we can change the way that we experience these challenges.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're ready.
All that before the baby has even arrived. So what's next when the baby is here? After almost a year of anticipation, the bundle of joy has arrived. But for some mothers, postpartum recovery can be challenging.
It's normal to have some bleeding after delivery, and this is the uterus kind of returning from its pregnant size back down to the non-pregnant size. It can last for a few weeks, even as long as up to 6 weeks. Pelvic floor issues could be common. They may feel as if there is a bit of difficulty in controlling the flow of urine. Occasionally there may be problems not just with urinary incontinence but fecal continence as well, not being able to control your bowels sometimes. So these are some of the common things that can happen after childbirth.
Up to 80% of women experience what we commonly call the baby blues. Irritability, inability to focus, anxiety. And that's all normal, and most of the time it goes away in 2 to 3 weeks after birth. The other things that people are surprised by is the physical experience of birth, the physical trauma, right? You could have tears. It could be painful to go to the bathroom. If you had a C-section, that's major surgery. It may be difficult to sit up. You may have limited mobility for a while. So there's a lot we don't necessarily think about until we're confronted with it, and trying to deal with those issues while doing the round-the-clock crazy sprint of feeding, changing, putting down for nap, and then trying to groom yourself, use the bathroom, feed yourself, get some rest. It's very taxing.
Is it funny?
And for new parents, online sources can provide solace and help.
I needed stitches. I had a lot of questions about the healing process and the bleeding associated, and also stomach tenderness. And as much as we have the obstetrician, gynecologist, there's just some things at midnight that you need to know the answer to. I sought membership within certain Facebook groups of women that were having babies around the same time. I realised that I wasn't the only one feeling irritable and uncomfortable at being touched, and slightly annoyed that I didn't have that time to myself anymore. Even though you're so happy and grateful to be a mother, sometimes you feel a little bit resentful because you haven't had a chance to brush your teeth until 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So it's so important for new mothers to be able to feel a little bit like their former selves. So having that kinship with mothers was so helpful for me.
Rox would be looking specifically at her areas of like recovery and whatnot, and I was trying to figure out like how can I make it easy for me, easier for Rox, easier for Evie. How can I make sure that Rox can be rested and that Evie has ample time between both of us as parents? Or if Rox is feeling this way, what's a good way? Because my old tips and tricks weren't working. Like what are some other new things that I could do and try to lift her spirits up or make her feel nice?
Another area where Roxanne found affirmation was when it came to feeding her baby.
There is always a very big push for breastfeeding. That pressure on you as a mother becomes this huge weight of responsibility in feeding baby. I was struggling so much with breastfeeding that Evie eventually ended up just crying herself to sleep by 5 in the morning because I was unsuccessfully being able to help her latch and feed her. So I could only imagine how hungry Evie was. But because I had that preset idea in my mind that I must breastfeed, I tried to continue on with that. I was at breaking point and I went on to the Facebook group, and there was so much information that was coming from those mothers because everyone's so different, and I realized how quickly I wasn't alone in that process, particularly for women that had to actually say, please, no judgment, about the decision to breastfeed or not.
It ultimately comes back down to like what works best. Once we had that conversation, it made it a lot easier. If Evie gets the adequate amount of whatever she needs from whatever avenue that it is, let's go from there. So I was very open with that.
For somebody that may not be able to produce milk, it's not about a choice, it's about how do I feed my baby.
Nice.
Pamela too had struggled with breastfeeding, but in a slightly different way.
My baby had no problem latching, but I have not enough milk. Like maybe she got sucked, but there's no milk coming out. But when we pump, also nothing come out. Then we also don't know how to use the pump, so we struggled a lot. On YouTube, they will just show you the steps, and you can follow the steps exactly, but you don't know if you're doing it correctly.
Across the internet, we can't get the specific answer at all. So in the end, we engaged an experienced massage auntie that specialized in milk expression. So she came and teach her about the different parts of the breastfeeding and where the milk is being stored in the breast and how to express the milk out in a better way. After the one session, the milk come out much naturally.
Khushbu's breastfeeding experience was just the opposite.
I had oversupply because it was a preterm birth. I wasn't lactating naturally, so it had to be induced, and I struggled a lot with engorgement issues. My baby was a preterm, and she couldn't naturally feed as a normal newborn because her face is smaller, her facial muscles are weaker to really get onto the suckling motion. I was on YouTube videos browsing for any help, and I would say thanks that there are these resources available. Soon enough, I could get the knack. But my initial days, I would say, these videos were definitely very intimidating. Nobody tells you that they have failed 12 times and it's the 13th time they got their head around and could do this. It can definitely be intimidating for people who was already loaded with postpartum hormones, because you almost feel like, oh, you failed because you couldn't carry a pregnancy to term. And then you have so many targets that you feel that are not met and you're trying to meet this.
Sometimes where we watch influencers and they share about their breastfeeding journey, I would like to believe that it comes from a place of encouragement, and sometimes they do provide strategies that they have found to be helpful, but strategies are like a toolbox. They don't work for every single person, and if it doesn't, then that's really okay. You know, this might not be suitable for us and we can try to look for something else. But it does not say that we are a failure.
Let's go.
Breastfeeding is best, but please understand, it's a journey. Try not to feel inadequate for it because it's not under your control. When the breastfeeding is not adequate enough for the baby's growth and nutrition, then align to the safety first. Available is the safest option. Not available, starving the baby is not a safe option.
Besides feeding baby, the other big hurdle new parents may face is getting baby to sleep.
Most parents want their children to sleep through the night as soon as they can, but the truth is they will all reach there at their own timing. Sleep training is becoming a more and more common topic these days, mainly because of the access to the internet. So as parents, we always want better sleep, and hence some parents would seek sleep training to get their goals.
For Michelle and Wei Kang, sleep training was something they felt they had to try.
We were almost driven mad by our son not sleeping. He just wanted to be with me, and I had to stand up physically and rock him. Like the moment I sit down, he would wake up. So that really drove me crazy, and my back was already hurting. I was like, okay, I can't do this. And we decided that, okay, perhaps we need to probably impart some sleep skills to the baby, and I sought out the internet to kind of look out for information on that.
The internet wasn't really kind in terms of finding which is the best way to sleep train your baby. I still feel that there's some stigmatization about sleep training your baby, you know. People are like, oh, you're letting your child cry to sleep.
There's this stigma that sleep training equates to crying it out. And the advice given on the internet revolving sleep training is just so diverse. Like a wake window for a 6-month-old baby could range from A to Z, and you don't know what to follow. And eventually we ended up hiring a sleep coach because we felt that we wanted to be handheld by someone professional.
And do not feel that you are being stigmatized. Our kids actually grow more attached to us, and we become better parents because they are well rested, we are well rested. Whatever energy we have, we invest into them. So I think this is something that we need to put it out there.
Michelle and Wei Kang were in agreement with their decisions.
Turn around your head on the pillow.
Lydia and Derek were, however, on opposite sides when it came to sleep training.
Sleep training was something that I really emphasized on because I really believed in the research as well as whatever that I read online about it being beneficial not just for the parents but plenty of benefits for the child's development. I even joined Facebook groups. I even had baby sleep chart being downloaded into my phone just to track how many hours that he has been sleeping consecutively. Then came in Derek's choice, which was that he wasn't even in for sleep training at all.
For this topic, we really agree to disagree. That's it. Yeah. I mean, I do understand where is Lydia's perspective coming from. She wants the baby to have good sleep. So this is really something that we dig a lot on the internet and try to find information. I do feel that a lot of times the internet, the reason why they are trying to promote those methods is it could be a sub-industry by itself. So I think this is something that we always want to remind ourselves that on top of the information that we get from the internet, sometimes we want to also use the instinct that we have as parents, both factors together, tweak it a little bit, customize it based on the family dynamics that we have.
I asked for Zayn and myself to be at my parents' place so that I can train him, and Derek would actually go back to his parents' place. It was that extreme. And true enough, I think by the third day, Zayn was able to sleep through the sleep cycles.
I still disagree.
Yeah, he still disagree.
If now one more time, I also may tahan.
Yeah, 再来一次, he also don't want.
There are so many different methods, and the method that will fit the family the most will depend on the family's parenting style and how much crying are they willing to accept. The main thing here is to have a consensus within the family itself which type of sleep training you prefer, and you must be consistent. Relax. Let's work things out together. The sleep will come.
They say parenting is not for the faint-hearted. And when it comes to help from the internet, it can be both feast or famine. We continue with the parenting adventures of our families tomorrow.